We've fully cooperated over the last year.
Has he asked for an
with the
interview
Mueller
with you
investigation? He has not, although we've provided any and all information, and we'll continue to do that.
Then you'd be willing to sit with him if he were to ask?
I would be more than willing to continue to provide any and all support in that. And we have outside counsel that will advise me accordingly.
Vice President Mike Pence speaking about the special counsel's ongoing Russia investigation. His remarks come amid a lengthy back and forth between President Trump's legal team and Robert Mueller's office over whether the president should sit down for an interview with Mueller. Let's bring in Judge Andrew Napolitano, Fox News senior judicial analyst. Judge, good morning and good to see you.
Good morning, Sandra.
So what we just saw from Vice President Mike Pence was seen as sort of him volunteering to sit down for an interview with Robert Mueller. I guess you could kind of listen to those words over and over and decide whether or not that was what happened there.
I thought it was a little unusual. I mean, those of us who follow this know that the vice president does have his own outside legal counsel, just as the president has Rudy Giuliani and a team of lawyers, and that they have voluntarily surrendered documents to Bob Mueller. But it is unusual for a person who has not been asked to meet with prosecutors and FBI agents to say, hey, I'm here if you want me. And by the way, when you call me in, I'm going to say I was there and nothing happened. The government is a little suspicious of people that volunteer that kind of information.
So what does it tell you that he did that?
It does tell me that he doesn't think it's a witch hunt, that he thinks it's a legitimate investigation, or he wouldn't be cooperating with it. It also tells me that he's about the staunchest supporter that the president has, and he basically wants to go there and say, I was there and I didn't see anything wrong. But it is dangerous for anybody to volunteer when they're not asked to go to speak to federal prosecutors. They are very suspicious of this kind of volunteerism.
It did sound very similar to what the president originally said. He said, sure, I'd be willing to sit down for an interview with Mueller, you know, pending my lawyer's advice on that.
I think that the president's lawyer, who comes on Fox all the time to basically recount his version of the negotiations with Bob Mueller, I speak of former Mayor Giuliani, of course, has given the president the advice that this is a dangerous environment for you. But if we can get some conditions out of Mueller, if we can learn more about his case. See, when you negotiate with someone, you learn their thinking. I believe that that's what Rudy Giuliani is attempting to accomplish. Our own Pete Hegseth asked the president just the other day when they were in
the rally, yeah.
Correct. Are you ruling out discussing with Mueller anything about obstruction of justice? The president wouldn't answer the question. Now, that may mean they haven't decided it yet, or it may mean that Rudy hasn't told the president yet that Rudy's decided that he doesn't want him to talk about obstruction. We don't know. The point is, it's dangerous for the president, who doesn't use an economy of words, to sit down in an environment where one slip-up or contradiction of something you already said can result in a charge of perjury.
Something else I think you said was very interesting was that this can actually be a red flag to the feds. If you have someone like the vice president come forward and sort of volunteer and say, yes, I'll sit down.
I'm smiling because in my prior life, I worked with this mentality of prosecutors and investigators. And when someone says, hey, let me come and talk to you or put me before the grand jury, they are suspicious of it, even if that person is a lawyer who happens to be the vice president of the United States.
So could this, like you've discussed with the president, be a trap, a perjury trap for Vice President Pence?
If you were to ask me, I would say the potential for that is great and grave, and you should stay away from this environment.
Is it possible at this point, do you think it is possible that, based on what you just heard from the vice president, that he could sit in that hot seat before the president would?
No. I don't think that Mueller's team are interested in hearing him say, I was there and nothing happened. They're interested in hearing the president's version of these events. They have I think they have nearly everything else they need. If you read the transcript of the interview with George Papadopoulos, who was one of their witnesses, they have everything they need.
Very interesting. We'll see where it all goes, Judge.
Okay.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Here now, Michael Goodwin, New York Post columnist and Fox News contributor, and Marie Harf, former State Department spokesperson under President Obama and a Fox News analyst. Good to have both of you here. Michael wrote a great piece over the weekend talking about all of this. So the big question, though, for these two players becomes who can sway the swayable voter out there.
Right. Well, look, I think it's very much about relitigating 2016, which the Democrats have been doing ever since 2016. And now we have President Obama back into the fray. Hillary Clinton is still on the sidelines throwing little grenades in every now and then. So I think the Democratic Party sees this midterm clearly as a referendum on President Trump. But I think the economy is such a strong suit in the president's hands. And you mentioned earlier about these documents. I do think that there is still a big question as to who did what in the Obama White House and in the Obama administration regarding the Russia probe, and whether James Clapper, John Brennan, how much the FBI was involved, Susan Rice, Samantha Power. I mean, on and on in terms of all the people in the administration. What role, John Kerry, what role did the State Department play? So I think this is still out there, and the president has the power to declassify the documents.
So why doesn't he do it?
I don't understand why he doesn't do it. I think he should do it. But even if it doesn't help him, even if there isn't some great big smoking gun there, I think in the service of transparency, which we should all want, there's too much secrecy in the government. Secrecy is one of the great advantages of the swamp. And so for the president not to declassify, I think he's really helping the swamp keep its dirty secret.
Yeah, a lot of people want him to declassify those documents. Here's another bit of President Obama talking about the Russia situation. Just watch this and we'll get Marie's reaction.
They're undermining our alliances, cozying up to Russia. What happened to the Republican Party?
First of all, President Obama said there was no way anyone could undermine our elections. That's what he said right before the election. He said, this doesn't happen, folks. But then when Hillary lost, suddenly it happened,
well,
right?
No, that's a gross generalization. That's
not really.
That's not accurate. But what I will say is President Obama is wildly popular. Look at Donald Trump's approval rating. It is way below Barack Obama's. And in many of these places he's campaigned, it's way ahead of where Donald Trump's is. So I actually think Barack Obama has a point here when he's getting on the campaign trail. But when it comes to Russia, the point he made there, I stood at the State Department podium and had to answer questions from Republican members of Congress about why our administration was, quote, too willing to work with Russia. All of those Republicans in Congress now are silent. Now that Donald Trump praises Putin, he stands next to him and blames the U.S. intelligence community. All of those Republicans are suddenly silent about Russia now, and that's what Barack Obama was saying.
The whole point of what Michael's saying about releasing, how the FISA request got through is to point out that there may have been some collusion going on all over the place. If you hire Christopher Steele and he's getting his information from Russians, and the Hillary Clinton campaign is paying for this stuff, and then you use that stuff to get the FISA warrant, you can laugh, but why not just answer those questions? Why not reveal those documents?
Those are assertions that are just that. There's no evidence to back that up. And I actually would totally support getting as much information about the Russia investigation out, because if there's any smoking guns, it's about Donald Trump and his campaign. Look, I think this will be a conversation.
Well, there's a whole investigation that's been doing that for 18 months. You're going to get that. That's
after
for sure.
Bob Mueller finishes, I think that's the proper time to talk about what we should put out to the public. Bob Mueller's investigation
Let me just
is the most important thing right now.
See, that idea that, Bob Mueller has nothing to do with these FISA warrants that happened 2 years ago.
That's not true.
2 years ago.
That's just not true.
There's no secrecy left other than to protect what's actually in the documents, what was asserted at the time. If they haven't found it in 2 years, I don't think they're going to find it. So let's see what the claims were. You mentioned Christopher Steele. It turns out the FBI was also paying him and then fired him. Did they tell the judges that they fired him because he lied? If you don't give the judges all of that information, you have really committed, I think, a wrongdoing, a serious wrongdoing. Whether it's a crime, I don't know, but it is certainly unfair to get a spying warrant on an American citizen on the basis of false or misleading information.
Who, by the way, they never even questioned after that.
They never arrested
completely
him.
Lost interest in him.
Yeah.
In terms of the question of this Professor Massoud, who was also part of the justification process for having these FISA warrants, because he talked to Papadopoulos, and Papadopoulos said, I got this information from, then he's talked to Alexander Downer, the Australian diplomat. So now the DNC lawyers say that they've been trying to serve him a subpoena, and they think he might be dead. I mean, they can't find this person who is a Maltese professor who
Right.
supposedly has worked for both Western, intelligence sources and also Russian intelligence sources. I don't find it that surprising that this is a person who could kind of slip off somewhere. I don't know why the DNC lawyers are saying he might be dead.
Well, they can't find him, and this is it feels like a rehash of an old Cold War spy novel, but I think the bottom line here is there were a lot of people warning multiple American intelligence and law enforcement agencies that the Russians were doing dirty things in 2016, and they may have been working with Trump campaign people. Some of those journalists that were working on this, some of these Russian dissidents, there is a history of them disappearing, as we've seen in Russia. So this is not some fanciful story we haven't seen play
lots
out.
of people might be dead. I'm just looking for some actual evidence. I think that the fact that they can't find him is
Right.
that's a
But
logical assessment.
This lawsuit, I mean, I must say, I completely forgot about this lawsuit until this story appeared. I mean, why is the DNC suing over this? I mean, isn't that what Mueller's supposedly doing? What is the point of the DNC trying to do a civil law? I mean, it never made any sense to me. Again, it buys into this victimization that the Democrats lost because of Russia. There's been no evidence of that, but they keep going down that hole, and here we are on the cusp of the midterms, and they still don't have a platform.
It's going to be interesting to watch former President Obama and President Trump go at it. We'll see if President Obama starts tweeting at him. Probably not.
Please
Probably
no.
not. Thank you, guys. Good to see you both. Thanks for being here.